Hello, everybody, and welcome to Brewing Boundaries. My name is Lindsay Idaluca. I am your host. I know it has been a minute since we have done a podcast, but I am very excited to introduce KateLicciardello today. She is a licensed mental health counselor, and we're going to talk a lot about the season changing. The sun sets a lot earlier. What does that mean for us? How do we make sure that we're still working on ourselves and making sure that we're doing proper self-care and proper rest? I'm really excited to talk to Kate too, as she's a big supporter of overthinkers and people pleasers, as well as perfectionists. So we talk about reducing some of that mental noise, embracing and embodying our lives and being confident and owning who we are and what our values are. So I'm really excited to introduce you guys to Kate. Without further ado, what are some things that maybe you have seen that work with your clients when it comes to, elevating your mood this time of year?
Really, really relevant question. Certainly taking vitamin D, giving ourselves the space to rest, finding ways to maybe appreciate more of the darkness, even if it's not your favorite thing. I think that's true for a lot of people. When the 4 p.m. sunsets start coming around, it can be a little gnarly.
Yeah.
So taking vitamin D, most of us in New England are deficient. Of course, your blood work can tell you better than I can, but that's true for most of us. We're not
Yeah.
spending enough time outside.
Hmm.
And to that end, if you can get out even for a few minutes of natural sunlight, that is really beneficial. We tend to literally need more rest this time of year. So letting yourself find ways to have cozy evenings, whether it's making a soup, having a tea, reading a book,
Hmm.
going for your comfort show. I think sometimes we can have high expectations of ourselves, regardless of what is happening in our lives and in the seasons. And the truth of the matter is that we are cyclical beings, just like our calendar year is. And so, really honoring that this is a time of going inward, being a bit more insular, and not having the same expectations for, getting stuff done and planting seeds like you might be doing in June.
Yeah. No, that's a really great point. I feel like society, especially in this country, it's go, go, go all of the time. But it is really important to focus on relaxation time, and especially, this time of year, you do wind down a little bit.
Yeah. And another thing that for me, and this might seem really obvious, but making sure I'm exercising consistently,
Yes.
getting those happy chemicals to my brain and doing that typically a few times a week is really helpful too. So, like making those little commitments to yourself and doing the things that help you feel good.
Yeah.
So, it's like finding that balance of like, okay, I'm going to push myself to leave my cozy house to do things that will help me feel better. And I'm
Yeah.
also going to let myself rest more and do those things.
I love that. That's a really great point. That's
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Now, Kate, I know one of your specialties is, talking to people pleasers. And
Mhm.
I really want to talk about that because I feel like going into this time of year, some people that have that trait, they don't want to say no, and then they do feel guilty for staying home. So it's a little bit of a balance. So what could you
Yeah.
tell our listeners and viewers, what would be a good idea for them to find that balance?
Ooh, yeah, that's a deep one. Well, for some people, it's deep. But I think this time of year, especially not just with the seasons changing, but with the holidays, again, there can be expectations that we need to say yes to everything. We need to overcommit. A few years in a row, I've run a workshop in December specifically because a lot of people have found it true that this time of year, with the holidays, we're saying yes to everything. And suddenly we're getting to January after having run ourselves ragged and we're like, how did I get so depleted?
Hmm.
So the dance of how much am I saying yes, how much am I saying no is obviously going to be individual. We're social beings, so we both need community and we need time to recharge, whatever
Of
that means
course.
for each person. I
Hmm.
think when it comes to the people pleasing, that can be a really like juicy area of self exploration to kind of reflect on. So whether it's a meditation practice, a journaling practice, kind of checking in with yourself, checking in with your body on number one, how do I know when it's too much? How do I know when I'm hitting that boundary of like, wow, I'm doing way too much?
Yep. Yep.
So tuning into when your body is telling you like, wow, you are going into overdrive. Where can you scale back? Where can you take something off your list?
Hmm.
And as you're getting in that practice, it could even become something that you check in with yourself before agreeing to something. I think a lot of us, I know I've been victim of this habit is saying yes immediately without even like, I have that blank space, so I have to, so yeah,
Hmm.
why not? Without actually saying, okay, let's look at the context of what do I have in my week? What do I already have in my weekend? And can
Absolutely.
I do this thing and keep my well-being?
Hmm. Absolutely. I'm a fan of I need to see how I feel, especially when it comes to like a Friday. A Friday plan is very hit or miss. Sometimes I'm like, ooh,
Oh my
I would
gosh,
like to,
Fridays are
but
so
Fridays are hard, right?
Fridays are really hard.
Hmm.
That's like there's nothing quite like a canceled Friday plan.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Yeah, just having nothing to do and just relaxing and being home is like is it really is lovely.
Like the high of having a plan and having the other person cancel, that's like the sweet spot. But also, not to get too derailed here by my own thoughts, like that's a perfect example of you if you know that Friday, the end of your day Friday, you're starting to approach feeling pretty done, taking some extra care before you agree to something right after work.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
does this need to be a rest time for me, or might I have the bandwidth for this?
Yeah, that's a
Would it be
great.
nourishing or would it be depleting?
I was going to say sometimes I literally will like schedule, like do not schedule anything. I have to do that for
That's
myself.
so genius. That's really smart. I would say I'm in the practice of scheduling the self care things, and I'm
Smart.
still on the journey in the practice of am I pausing before I agree to social plans, especially with the holiday parties. There can be like an added sense of obligation.
Absolutely. You know there's going to be a lot of holiday parties coming up, so conserve that energy.
Right. Especially for, our beloved families that may or may not require different types of bandwidth and different types of energy
Yeah.
from us.
That's a very, very political way to say that. I appreciate that. Yeah. Spoken like a true
Can't
therapist
get myself
there.
in trouble right before the holidays?
Yeah. There you go. There you go. So Kate, tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about, we talked about how you do work with people pleasers a lot, but some of your specialties and your areas of work.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that. So, I work as an individual therapist, and occasionally I'll run groups and workshops as well. So, on the individual level, I work with folks who typically identify as anxious, some sort of
Mhm.
anxiety disorder. Typically, they work with some excessive worry, like we said, the people pleasing, some perfectionism. There can be a lot tied into perfectionism in relationships with others, in relationships with ourselves. Sometimes perfectionism goes hand in hand with overachieving and kind of being the type of person who feels like they're making everything happen for themselves on the outside, but internally it never feels like enough, or they're not able to find that balance and that equilibrium. And um, a lot of times, harsh or self critical self talk can also come up with those types of patterns. So, those are the individuals that I typically work with. And
Okay.
I like to work with the modality of acceptance and commitment therapy. So
Okay.
that involves a lot of mindfulness tools. That could be meditation, guided meditations in session, um, different spirituality work, depending on what a client is curious about and what feels meaningful for them. And then the other piece is so building that self acceptance, self compassion. And then the other piece is commitment work, which refers to typically values work. So helping folks
Mhm.
identify their core values, their authentic values, and really trying to sort of explore how their life is right now versus where they would like it to be, and
Yeah.
see where they're like, wow, yeah, I'm on the path and where I want to be, and where maybe things aren't exactly as aligned as they'd like them to be, where they're not living up to the values and the things that are meaningful. And a
Yeah.
lot of times, the people pleasing and the conditioning from our families, from our culture, can come in with the values. Like there might be a little bit of, okay, is this my value or is this someone else's value? Is this something I've been taught that doesn't really feel true for me? So there's a lot of like figuring out what's your voice and what has been, things that you've internalized from other people that maybe don't feel as true anymore or as helpful.
And I think that's really important. And, a lot of the times you talk about young 20s who are, they're finding themselves and going out on their own, but that can be said for really any generation, right? Because they might not have even noticed it
Yeah,
until a certain point in their life.
completely. Yeah, I mean, I think that our 20s can be sort of a natural time to separate from our families of origin, explore, and have that like self inquiry, the self inquiry moments, especially as we're trying to figure out adulthood maybe for the first time. And I think these questions can be asked of any of us, regardless of age,
Yeah. Yeah.
because we're always changing.
Absolutely. And I think that that's something that needs to be accepted more in the sense of like, it's not a bad thing to change your wants and your values. And I talk to a lot of people that
Yeah.
are talking about changing their careers, and you evolve, you
Hmm.
change who you are over time. And I think that that's difficult for
Completely.
people to accept, not only about themselves but about people that they know, and I put know in quotes because it becomes a pointed negative target sometimes, like, well, you've changed. But what if that change is positive for them?
Yeah, that can be a really hard part of change because there is the potential that you will change in a way that people don't like, or the relationship isn't what it used to be. The
Mhm.
relationship might change. And I think that's really scary for a lot of people. And
Yeah,
that doesn't mean that it's wrong.
exactly. Exactly. I think that that is,
Yeah.
you hit the nail on the
Yeah, I
head.
think that's a really good point.
Yeah, the acceptance piece. And I love ACT. For some people that, don't know about that, I would really love to talk. You use the word align and you use the words values
Mhm.
work, to talk a little bit about that
Mhm.
with people who are listening who might be like, oh, like, how do I do that? Or what can I do to make sure that I'm aligned? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. Yeah, so typically when someone's interested in values work, I will share sort of like a master list of possible values,
Hmm.
which is easily Googleable. Um, I think for a while I was using a list that Brene Brown made up, but they're all over the internet for free.
Hmm.
And so I'll send that to a client and have them narrow down like 5 to 10 top core values.
Yeah.
Um, and they'll bring it back to a session and we'll just sort of unpack it. And that will look like going through the list. What is it about this word? Maybe the word is freedom or security. What is it about this
Mhm.
value that called to you? And what does that mean? For some
Yes.
people, freedom means being able to choose their work schedule or take a certain number of weeks off a year. All of my examples are work related, but
That's okay.
um, and for other people, it means something completely different.
It's a good point.
So we talk about what does this value mean for you? And like, where do you feel like you are with this right now in your day to day life? Do you feel connected to freedom? Do you feel like freedom is a part of your life? Does it feel embodied for you?
Mm,
And then we'll look at, are there certain things in your life that bring you closer to this value? And are there things in your life that bring you away from this value? And
great
from there,
question.
like, are there actions that could be taken? And what's most important right now?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And knowing that just like who you are, those values can change depending on what season you're in.
Completely. Yeah, completely. I'll sometimes do values work with a client and we'll weave it in here and there. And then after a while, we might tweak it. We might revisit and say, how are we doing that with this? And does this still feel true?
Yeah.
And I do that with myself sort of as a self check in, not with any like super rigid regularity, but once in a while, I have a list of what my core values are. And I'll pull them up and be like, okay, how are we doing with this? Am I doing the
Yeah.
things that I say are really meaningful? Is there anything I can add or take out?
That's a great idea. Just and keeping yourself accountable too to your own wants and needs. And I see that a lot with new parents. And working with
Mm,
moms, that they're like, "Oh, well, I'm not the same person after I have a baby and I go back to work." Like, no, you're not, and that's okay.
yeah, that is an excellent example of someone who's, I mean, talk about a massive transformation
Yeah.
and a transition in life that I'm sure just shakes up your priorities.
Of course, of course. And it doesn't have to be a negative thing. That's what I say about
Totally.
different seasons. Yeah, different seasons at different
Hmm.
times, you need different things.
It can be like a living document,
Hmm.
can be something that you return to and check in with.
Yeah, yeah, for
It's
sure.
not
Do you
something we're going to like put in stone and be like, okay,
Yeah.
here's your formula. This is how it has to be now.
Do you do that with clients? Do you recommend that they like write things down, keep notes? I know you'd mentioned journaling a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, so it depends on how open the client is. I mean, as a therapist, the work that we do between therapy sessions is really what matters and is really going to make the change.
Hmm.
So if clients are open to journaling, I love to talk about different journaling prompts and that could be a great way to access that self-reflection. Um, I definitely, not always, but if we set, homework for the week or something, I might recommend that a client write something down if that
Yeah.
would be helpful. And
Okay.
even like, especially when we're trying to develop a habit that might not be super intuitive yet, scheduling it. Like
Hmm.
we were saying in the beginning, we're busy and we're going to go into autopilot and we're going to worry about our to-dos before we worry about ourselves,
Of
most
course.
likely.
Yeah.
So scheduling, like setting an alarm, setting a reminder to do that 5 minute meditation, to do that journaling prompt, to try to implement the thing that you said you'd really like to try out.
Hmm.
However, you can give yourself a reminder, unless you're a person that doesn't need to write things down, but I don't think
I
it's going to hurt any of us to write things down.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. What advice would you give to those who maybe they are trying to start a new habit based on a value of theirs and it's taking them a little longer than they wanted it to kind of click?
Yeah, this has got to be one of the biggest frustrations,
Hmm.
especially in therapy. Behavior change is hard for human beings. It is hard for the human brain. I think one of like the fastest tracks to self-compassion and patience for ourselves with trying to develop new habits is remembering that our nervous systems are going to resist change.
Mm.
Even if our logical mind is like, I know exercise is good for me. I know meditation will help me feel more grounded before this thing. There's going to be some wiring in our nervous systems that is going to say, it would be so much easier if you didn't do that.
Hmm.
It takes work to put that effort in.
Yeah.
It's like exercise for our brain. Like it actually takes calories to do something differently. So having patience for yourself, reminding yourself that you're probably not going to want to do the thing, even if it sounds good.
Yeah.
And using that as a way to like have it's like the Kristen Neff says she's like the mother of self-compassion, and she talks about two types of self-compassion, fierce and tender. And
Okay.
I feel like with behavior change you kind of need both, where tender is like that really nurturing kindness toward yourself of like, wow, this is really hard, wow, you really don't want to do that. And fierce is like, we're going to take action and we're going to do this thing even though we don't want to today.
Yeah.
So using both of those kinds of self-compassion to be gentle with yourself and also hold yourself accountable for the things that you claim you want for yourself or that you know will help you feel better.
Yeah. That's a great way to put that. That's a really great way to put that. And I like that you use the fierce and tender aspect, because you do need both. You do need a little bit of both when changing those. And we live in such an instant society. We want things done now. We want quick change. We want to lose 50 pounds. We want to do, so it's everything is a journey.
Totally. I mean, you can open Instagram before your feet even hit the floor and see someone else's gym routine. And automatically it's like, oh gosh,
Yep.
there's, it's so true. There's so much coming at us and we do expect it to be overnight. And starting things for most of us just isn't going to feel that simple.
Yeah. 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 That's very well said. On our podcast, it's named Brewing Boundaries. And I love to ask
Mm-hmm.
people, what boundaries means to them.
Ooh. I think boundaries to me means remembering my own needs
Mm,
in relationships.
okay.
So going back to like checking in and honoring myself, my bandwidth and my capacity, maybe in a social situation when I'm getting invitations,
Yeah.
doing that check in, saying no when I need to. And then the fierce self compassion that we talked about is a form of a boundary that I have with myself,
Mm,
where I'm gonna keep this commitment to myself, not with the expectation that I do it perfectly or I do it 100% of the time, but there are these non-negotiables in my life that I know help my life run smoother, help my body feel healthier, and I'm going to do those things, and that's a boundary.
that's great. I think that's wonderful. And Kate, I did want to give you an opportunity too to kind of talk to our viewers about, we talked how you do work with um, clientele that have anxiety, and you work with people pleasing, but I'm sure that there are other people that are, wondering if there's a specific age group that you work with and how they can get a hold of you, and if you're even taking new clients.
Yeah. So I am taking new clients. I work with 18 and older. I would say most of my clients are in their 20s through 40s.
Okay.
I do have some older adults as well, but yeah, 18 and up. And did you ask how they can get a hold of me?
Yes.
Or did my brain just go there? Okay.
No, I did ask that.
So the best way to get a hold of the best way to get a hold of me is emailing me directly. So my email is kate.lmhc.ri@gmail.
Perfect. And I will put that
And
in
my
the show
website
notes.
is katelmhc.com. So you
Perfect.
can also find me there, and I have a little contact box, and you
Okay.
can find meditations and any events. If I'm doing a workshop, will also be on the website.
That's great. I think sometimes people like a workshop. They might not be ready so to speak, for individual therapy. But I think having that option is really great for people as well.
Yeah, I love a workshop, and I totally agree. It can feel more accessible to be like, okay, I'm interested maybe in doing some sort of self-exploration or mindfulness, but not fully diving into one-on-one, or don't feel like I need one-on-one right now.
Yeah, yeah,
I love a
absolutely.
workshop, I love a class. So
Me
always
too.
happy to connect with folks there too. I'm
Me
sure you
too.
do.
That's great. That's awesome. That's so great, Kate. And before we go, is there anything else that you think that you want our listeners to know about you and your practice or the clientele you work with?
I think I'm feeling pretty complete in what I've shared. Not to turn this back around on you, but I was just curious if you had anything to add to our surviving daylight savings and surviving winter list.
No, I mean, I think that's a great I think that's a great question. I'm constantly trying to think of those things, right? You hit the nail on the head. Exercise is a big one for me.
Mhm.
Being able to just to get out and move my body like certainly helps. But I'm also somebody that like I will try to embrace the early darkness and use that as
Yeah.
like some extra cozy time.
Yeah.
I've become better, much better with that. Whereas I feel like I used to be uncomfortable with it. And now I
Hmm.
love to be on my couch reading or watching TV with tea.
Yeah.
At 5 o'clock, it's dark. I'm fine with it. But
Yeah.
really, no, seriously. But for me, I think before, like, I don't know what it was. Like, I felt like I was missing out on something, or there were, I felt like I should be, the dreaded should be doing
Totally.
something. So becoming more
Mhm.
comfortable in that aspect has helped me personally.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like I've made a similar shift with embracing the early darkness. That's not to say that I want the 4 p.m. sunsets to last forever, but
Yeah, of course not.
I try to remind myself that in the middle of summer, when it's bright until 9 p.m., I struggle to get in bed right after work with a book and tea
Hmm.
without feeling guilty. So I'm like,
Me too.
okay, remembering it's all temporary. Like, let's enjoy this added coziness, and brighter days are coming.
Absolutely. I think that was very well said. Thank you, Kate, so much for being a guest. We really appreciate it. And I will make sure to
Yeah.
put your information in the bottom of the description so that people can find you if they'd like to get a hold of you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lindsay. It was a pleasure. This was really fun.